to Unirunner video drum lessons for December 21st, 2006. My name's Darren Mathis. Glad to be back here in the man cave to share a few of my thoughts and ideas with you today. I got an email recently from a fellow named Christian Martin who says, "I think your site is great and very useful. What I'm writing about is whenever I get on my kit, I usually end up doing the same thing every time. I am self-taught and now I got all the basic stuff down. I can do some pretty cool technical stuff, but I really want to get better at triplets and things of that nature. I want to expand what I do on the drums, essentially not sure what or how. I should probably buy a book on paradiddles. But I am interested in what you have to say first." Well, thanks for your email, Christian, and I can kind of relate to that idea of getting on the drums and doing the same thing every time. I think when my parents first bought me my drum kit, I probably knew one drum beat that I played for probably months, and so they were more than happy to pay for some drum lessons for me there in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I took some drum lessons from a guy named Cody Collins for a while, and he introduced me to some new ideas, and one of those ideas is based on this book. It's called The Drummer's Cookbook. And what this book is, it's just a large collection of beats. And I'll give you an example of the kind of beat that I've transcribed out here that you can see. So if you get into the rut of playing the same rock beat over and over and over, what you can do is look in this Drummer's Cookbook, and it has this kind of beat here. I'll give you this example, where the top line is your hi-hat, so you've got your 8th note pulse going like you do in most rock beats, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or in a lot of rock beats. And then between the snare drum and the kick drum, this book just has endless varieties of combinations that you can play between the snare drum and the kick drum. And so what happens by playing these exercises, you get kind of well, it kind of challenges you because you're playing things you aren't necessarily comfortable with. But the more you stretch yourself and play these figures that you might not be comfortable with, the more you start incorporating these figures, and that kind of freshens up your drumming. You're not so much locked into what you're just comfortable with, but you're willing to take more risk and you feel comfortable playing a wider variety of rhythms. So like for instance on this beat, you've got the hi-hat going on the top, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The bottom line is the kick drum, and the middle line is the snare drum. So if we look at just the kick drum and the snare drum, the kick drum you've got 2 8th notes, 1 and then you hit the 2 on the snare, and then the 1 E and the of 2 you hit on the kick drum, the 3 and the and of 3 you hit on the kick drum, the 4 you hit on the snare drum, the 4 E and, those 2 16th notes of the 4 count you'll hit on the kick drum, and the last 16th note, the of 4 you'll hit on the snare drum. So I'll just play the kick drum and the snare drum. 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and So that is one way you can kind of stretch yourself and play in different combinations that will really freshen up your drum beats. So here's that beat. 1 and 2 E and 3 So you could do this on your own. Just take draw out 3 lines, put the hi-hat on the top, just come up with different combinations, challenge yourself with what you can do between the kick drum and the snare drum, because it's going to help you to be able to better react to various rhythms that you might come across in your music that you play too. And the Drummer's Cookbook comes up with more complex variety of rhythms, like for instance one example might be something like this rhythm here. I'll just play the kick drum and the snare drum lines of this rhythm. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and So once you get that rhythm down, you can vary it up by just like for instance switching up the rhythm on the 4 count. Instead of playing 4 and here you've got the 4 count, 4 E and So if you happen to pick up this Drummer's Cookbook, you might find yourself going through these beats pretty slowly when you start out. But once they start to become part of your muscle memory, you can really crank them out, and it's a lot of fun realizing how you can stretch yourself, and pretty soon you'll be playing stuff you never thought you'd be able to play. You might start out at this rhythm, at this tempo. I mean, even at that tempo, it's pretty good. So one way to work into it is just doing what I was doing, playing just the snare and the kick drum part. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and So I wish you the best with that. And a lot of the drummers magazines you get too have beats like this transcribed out. But what I like about this is that you keep the hi-hat going, and it really works on working on the technique between your snare drum and your kick drum.
I want to thank Unirunner viewer Precious Yamaguchi, who sent in a couple of videos I thought were really interesting. She says she became interested not too long ago in drumming when she went to Ghana and learned how to play the djembe from the villagers. And so she sent in a couple of videos I thought were really interesting here. And she says that in Ghana, in this community, the relationship with drumming is really unique because it's literally a way in which they communicate. She says they play 4 kinds of drums: the boba, which is the biggest; the kanga, not to be confused with the conga; the kiti, and the djembe. The names of the drums come from the sounds they make, such as kiti, 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 etc. Precious says that she studied with the Iwe people in the Volta region of Ghana, where drumming is part of the everyday culture. Thanks, Precious, for sending in the videos. Precious is now in China teaching abroad. She's originally from Los Angeles, but now she's taking snare drum lessons in China, and she says the podcast helps because her snare drum teacher doesn't speak English, and she only speaks a little bit of Chinese. So, well, thanks, Precious. I'm glad it's helping out a little bit. Next week, I will do the drawing for the Darren's Favorite Things contest that's running at unirunner.com. Thanks to everyone who took that survey. It's been great reading all the comments and feedback that are associated with that. Anyway, tune in next week, and on the podcast I'll actually draw a name from everyone who's taken that survey. And if you took the survey, you should have got an email back from me verifying that. So it'll be kind of a pseudo live drawing when you tune in next week, so that should be kind of fun. And if you'd like to be entered into that contest, you can still fill out the survey before next Wednesday, December 27th. And check out unirunner.com for the details of that contest if you'd still like to enter. A couple of DVD sets by John Blackwell, Steve Smith, 4 pairs of drumsticks, a drum music book from Hamar Percussion Publications. Thanks to everyone who supported the podcast, and this podcast is sponsored by Patrick Murphy. So thanks a lot, Patrick, for your support. You can visit Unirunner on the web at unirunner.com. Feel free to post comments or respond to comments posted by others. And in the meantime, we'll keep in touch. We'll see you next week for that drawing. And until then, keep practicing, and God bless.